Hello and welcome to my podcast piece for the sports broadcasting module. Today I'm going to be talking about the relationship between different forms of media, both old and new, and its impact on nationalism and globalisation. So we'll start with nationalism, which can be defined as identification with one's own nation and support for its interests. And the media sport nationalism trio is very important, and it's where national identities can be forged for a lot of people. And Vincent and Kyan in 2014 stated that the media comes in when creating a narrative of sometimes it can be a us v them type of narrative, particularly when it comes to international sports. As well as that, nationalism can help forge of identity, which can be portrayed through sports. And a good example of that is when England play in major football tournaments. We often see England flags draped over houses, cars, in pubs, public places, and you don't really get that kind of support for a national cause any other time apart from in major sporting tournaments. And that sense of national pride can be supported by the fact that when England do play in these tournaments like the World Cup and the Euros, all of those matches are broadcast live on free-to-air TV, meaning that everyone in the country is able to watch the games, which adds to that sense of togetherness and national pride. And we saw that particularly last summer during the European Championships. A lot of the games that England played were held at Wembley, which again added to that sense of nationalism and national pride in the England team. So moving on to globalisation, which can be defined by the process in which a business or other organisations develop international influence or start to operate on an international scale. This relates to the new forms of media as they tend to lend themselves to globalisation a little bit more so than the old forms of media. And an example of that can be found in newspapers, where if you look at the distribution of newspapers, it tends to be local newspapers in the local area, but they don't tend to go abroad and out of the country that they're produced. They tend to stay tend to be sold in the country that they're produced, and that's because of the old forms of media don't tend to lend themselves into globalisation. However, sports news is seen all around the world, and that's mainly due to the use of online presences such as social media and other ways of consuming sports news. Another area where sport has seen global changes within its actual live broadcasting of events, and a good example of this is within the English Premier League. So last season there were 4 different providers of live coverage for the Premier League. There was Sky Sports, there was BT Sport, there was Amazon Prime, and there was also some matches broadcast live on the BBC. So it's 4 different broadcasters that are all showing the same products, i.e. the league. But 3 of those can only be watched in one country. Sky Sports, BT Sport and the BBC only operate in the UK. So those matches can only be seen in the UK, they can only operate in their own country. There has been a suggestion that an over-the-top streaming service could be the future of live sports coverage. For example, a Netflix-style model where all of the coverage is in one place, and that could be broadcast all around the world as well. So that could certainly help with the globalisation of sports.